Alright, welcome to this track breakdown of my track Endboss on Malignant. So we're gonna take a look at this and go over all the different things that I did. This is kind of a crazy project. I use Bitwig as my main DAW, as you can see, so I made it with that. And yeah, so let's take a look first of all at the drums, I would say. I'll play back just a little bit of the bass line so you have an idea again in your mind of what it sounds like. All right. So yeah, let's take a look at the drums first. So if we go in here, the first thing we have here is the kick. There's a bunch of disabled stuff in here as well. You can delete that. So yeah, we have a kick sample. I mean, most important is that I think you select the right kick to begin with, so you don't have to do like a ton of processing anymore. But either way, what I did here was I added a little bit of a low end boost with EQ. I use EQ like a lot. Pro Q3 is actually the one plugin that I would install over any other one because I EQ so much. Then we have Slap in here, which is a plugin from Yum Audio and Mr. Bill for replacing transients. And I use this like hard click transient. Basically, if you listen to it without that, just adds a little impact to the very beginning of the sound. Then I have ST4B transient shaper to kind of take out a little bit of the low mid transient. Another Pro Q that takes out some of the clicky sounds of the kick. And then I have duck in here to kind of shorten the kick a little. So that just cuts off the tails a bit. I could probably have also just selected them all and shortened them like this, but I guess I did it with duck, which has the same result. Then we have a ride here that comes in later on. Just a standard ride with very light processing. We have some shakers that are on the kicks. It's actually not really a shaker. It's actually a closed hi-hat. Just still has the name of shaker. Then we have another hi-hat here that comes in the switch. Then we have a clap. This is kind of a stack of 3 different claps that come together. So it's this one, and this. And together they have a bunch of processing. So it has a convolver on it. It has a saturator, a Pro Q for low cut, a transient shaper to boost the attack a little bit, Pro Q again to boost the highs after that. This one is disabled. Then we have another convolver for like another reverb. And then we have a Pro Q just to boost the highs again a bit. This stuff is stuff that I usually add like in the process of mixing. So yeah, some of this wasn't there from the beginning, but I added it during the process later on. And then altogether it sounds like this. Just a nice and beefy clap, especially in combination with the kick. That's when it really comes together. So yeah, that's basically it for the drums. On the group, I have a bit of processing. So I have a saturator on here, then a Pro Q that takes out like a tiny bit of the mids. Another Pro Q, this one, what does this do? I think this is only on during the intro to kind of take out some of the frequencies. Then we have a transient shaper on here. And Pro Q, this actually doesn't do anything. Or does it? It might have automation on the gain scale. No, it actually doesn't do anything. All right. Then we have texture. This adds a little bit of high end to the drums. If you listen to it without that, it just adds like a little crash that goes along with the sound with an envelope follower. So it's pretty nice. Then we have a ring mod that gives it a bit of extra crunch again. barely noticeable, but it adds a little bit because the modulator is set to self, which gives it that kind of fluttering sound. And then we have a 2-layer saturator, so we have some parallel distortion going on here. In one chain there's a really heavy saturator, in the other one there's nothing. And then another saturator for some reason, I guess just to beef it up again. Again, something that I probably added in the mixing process. Okay, the next part is the basses, and this is gonna be pretty interesting because I did a ton of processing on this. So I think the best thing to do here would be to first start by disabling all the effects, and then we can go over them one by one and see what they're all doing to the sound. Okay, so I'm gonna turn these off. As you can see, it's a pretty big chain here with a lot of stuff. And the basic sound from Vital is, because I made these sounds with Vital, is gonna sound like super, super basic. So I'll turn all of these off too. And then we have a separate sub in here, I believe. So I'm gonna turn the effects off also on that. And then on the group, I also have loads of processing, so I'm also going to turn that off and go over it one by one. And then you can, I think that way you can see pretty nicely like how I built it step by step and what each effect kind of added to the sound. So let's start with this layer here. It was first a Vital layer that basically, tiny impact with a little bit of a comb filter on it. Literally just this. So yeah, you can see already like all the post-processing is what really gives this sound its ring and its character. And we have a bit of soft clipping in here that's also not doing all that much. Just a bit of distortion. Then we have a second layer. This is, I believe, for the sub. Yeah, so this is essentially like an 808 type of sub. And if we listen to both the layers together, yeah, then I distorted the sub a bit. And then I added OTT to the first layer and saturation. And then a Pro Q that boosts the highs of it. And an FX layer with a convolver. This one is muted. A convolver that has like this kind of random IR. So that just adds a layer of a little bit of a wide reverb that has that little like little roomy feel. Okay, then if we close this chain, the first effect I added here was a disperser that just kind of nicely rounds out the sub a bit. Then saturation. And you can see it like starts to come together with that saturation because it really glues the sub together with the other elements. Then we have multipass over here. This essentially adds a ring mod. It uses the low frequency band, so the sub, to ring mod the higher frequencies, so everything above 440 hertz. And that gives it that like crazy crunch. It's a really cool technique. Then we have a distortion from Bitwig. That's essentially just for the first two hits here that are kind of filtered out so that it filters those. Then we have harmonic split, which essentially splits the frequencies with spectral processing into even and odd harmonics, and then you can process those separately if you want to. But in this case, I just wanted to turn the even harmonics down a little bit. So that's the advantage that you can do with this. And therefore it sounds a little bit more odd, like it has more odd harmonics. And that sounds pretty cool. It sounds almost like a flanger a bit. Then we have a Pro Q that adds a bit of low mids and a bit of high end. Sounds a bit harsh, but with some of the processing after that, it will smooth it out a lot. So then we have OTT. And this is pretty, not super aggressive as like OTT on 100% would be. It's just on 45 and the upward compression all the way off. Then we have a Pro R here for the reverb. I love using Pro R. So that puts the sound in a room as well. Then we have Soothe to even out some of the harsher frequencies. Then we have a multi-band processor that's just a frequency shifter on the highs. So everything above 647 hertz gets shifted down a little bit. That just makes the metallic tone to it a little bit darker. Oh, I forgot this Pro Q. What does that do? Takes out the lows a little bit and boosts this like high range. Then we have here a custom thing that I built called the gain tilt compensation, which essentially makes it so that you can tilt in terms of frequency presence a sound before it goes into an effect and then tilt it back after. So that means you would boost or cut the lows and highs like this with a tilt before an effect like this. You can see it here. And then afterwards, it does the same thing again, but inverted after the effect. So thereby you can kind of determine the weighting of the frequencies. So you can say like, I want the lows because for example, if you send lows into saturation, or you send a sound with a lot of lows into saturation, then those lows will crush, will distort like pretty soon. Whereas if you tilt it a bit so that it's more biased towards the highs, then it'll distort the highs first and the lows won't affect the distortion as much. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do here. Basically to apply a spectral limiter, which limits the loudest frequencies. So it cuts off the loudest frequencies. But with a bit of a tilt. And you can see here that just kind of cuts off those like annoying frequencies a little bit. In a way, it turns everything a bit closer to brown noise. But yeah, so that's that. Then if we turn the Pro Q3 on after, that just takes out a little bit of that like low subharmonic and increases the highs. So that's basically the sound. And then we have a layer in here. I think this is just a resampled version of the bass with some reverb on it on 100%. So yeah, that's basically it. And then on the bass group, we have a bunch of processing. So first of all, I have a EQ that adds a lot of low end, I guess. Then I used clips, which is a clipper. Then we have this FX layer that adds a little bit more convolution. Just another kind of layer of room and texture. Then we have dimension expander to make the highs a little wider. And a lot of people use dimension expander just and leave it there, but I always like to low cut the sides with a Pro Q, because that makes those lower mids more narrow again. I don't really like wide mids, wide low mids especially, because they make it sound messy and they kind of take away from that focus or the impact of the lower mids. Then we have another Pro Q that takes out here this annoying frequency, I guess. Some very subtle adjustments. Like as we get down the line here, the adjustments get more and more subtle. And they also affect more elements together, right? Because we have like this bass variation back here, for example. So that's the reason why I applied all this processing on the group, so that it affects like all of those different variations together. Like as I worked on this, I made duplicates of the bass and just made variations of it. And yeah, so that's when I would apply more processing on the groups. So we have two saturators in a row here that are, I guess, just tying this together a bit. The processing on this is a bit unhinged for sure, but I guess all of it added to that character that I wanted. Took out the low mids a little bit, boosted the mids. Again, like tiny adjustments here. These are probably all adjustments made in the mixing process. And you can see I have a lot of Pro Qs in a row because I always add a fresh EQ when I want to do more processing to a sound. So that's what I ended up doing here. Again, more and a bit more. This is with some dynamic EQing to bring out the highs a bit more. Then I added a crystalline reverb here. This is just some more reverb that has some automation on it too. So this is only on during certain moments here, just to fill in the silent gaps a little bit. And then we have, what else? After crystalline, we have another Pro Q. This processing chain has so many Pro Qs. This is another dynamic EQ here for the highs. We have some OTT again to squash everything a bit, but here, very gentle, like compared to the other one, this is much more gentle still. Then we have Infiltrator. I use this mainly for the intro here. So I think this just has some automation. Yeah, here I automated the macro of the Infiltrator basically during the intro because all I wanted to do is to apply like a little filtering and reverb to that intro to increase the tension for the intro. So yeah, that's what that was for. Then there's another Pro Q that does like some very, very subtle EQing. And then everything comes together. Yeah, so that's the bass sound. And then the variations are pretty simple. There's a bit of a different pitch in the switch here. Some different settings on different parameters, of course. And then for this one, there's again like pretty much all the same processing because it's a duplicate, but then some of the parameters are changed. So yeah. And it maintains that quarter note flow for that layer just to, while there's that crazier flow, there's also that quarter flow that keeps the rhythm going the whole time. Okay, the next thing we can look at after that is the intro elements and the FX elements. So I have two different groups here. For the FX elements, let's start with those actually. So there we have this atmosphere sample. I had just bought Transit at the time, so I was using that a bunch to create some interesting effects on all of these sounds. So that's where that reverb and echo effect comes from in this case. We have a bit of Pro R on this, just some very simple processing basically. So that's for the intro atmosphere. Then we have this sample here. This is just a little noise layer for that, on top of the bass. I could have put this on the bass group, but anyways. Then we have some atmosphere here. This is like a crazy dissonant bow sound, just very subtle in the background to give a bit of that dark vibe to the track. So that's the whole FX group. Then we have the intro, and here we have a lot of different layers. So we have this filtered version of the bass itself. We have this. That's another filtered version of the bass. Then we have this little siren effect. We have the try again sample. Try again. And this has a bunch of movement as well. Then we have this variation of the try again. We have this polypedgiator. This is a preset from Bitwig, but with some modifications. And that's what gives you this like this sample, this melody. and it like totally starts glitching out here towards this. And that basically comes from Infiltrator. So it's just, it's one of the Infiltrator presets. It's like a crazy glitchy thing. And I automated the intensity to glitch it out towards the drop. Then we have some sound effects. Then we have this riser. And some impact sounds. And then everything comes together to this kind of cinematic, dark. And on the master, I also have transit, which is automated in the intro to create a bit more tension towards the drop here. So if you listen to it as it's rising. Yeah, so then we have a send in here that's for the sidechaining. So all my bass group goes into this send, and it has a shaper box on it. This one is not active. The shaper box basically gets triggered every time the kick plays. So it has this kind of more aggressive curve for the lows and a slightly more gentle curve for the mids and highs, because there's a separation at 388 hertz. And then for the mastering, we have, other than this transit plugin, these are disabled or just experiments. We actually have a little bit of OTT on the master, just a little, because it's a pretty aggressive track. So I tried out OTT and it worked. I don't usually do that, but when it works, you know. So there we go. Then we have Pro Q here, where I took out just a little bit of the lows. They were already pretty balanced between the kick and the sub, because those are the two only elements that play down in those frequencies. But then as I was pushing the sound into the clipper, I noticed that there was just too much low end, and then I took it out here instead of going onto the two individual elements, which usually I would recommend you to go to the individual elements, but because they were already fairly balanced, I could just take it out on the master. Then I did a low cut on the sides here, just to make sure they're all mono. Then we have standard clip. This is what I use the most for mastering. It's just a neat clipper. So I pushed it into the clipper by like almost 6 dBs. Then we have a Pro L that's just giving it a little bit of extra boost with the limiter. This is set up so that it's almost like a clipper, because when the attack is all the way up, there's this complex explanation what Pro L does, but it has two different algorithms. One is more of a traditional limiter, and the other is more of a clipper, and depending on how you set the attack, when you have it all the way up, then basically everything goes into that clipper algorithm. So this is like pretty much another clipper, just doing 2.6 dBs more volume. And then the LUF meter here. Gives us like a -6, -7. And these are just, this is just like a rolling sampler that continuously records everything that happens in case I want to drag out some samples or something, or resample something. Spectrum viewer, simple just for visualizing, and Vision 4X. I look at this thing religiously to meter my low end and stuff like that, because you can see pretty well like when your kick is too loud, for example. So yeah, we can see that like the kick is at a pretty good level compared to the sub. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you learned something. Hope you got some ideas or some inspiration. And I'll see you soon.